Man, it's hard to fathom Georgia's going to be successful without this particular thing in 2024. It's been something that they've relied on for such a long time, really going back to 2019. And that's the play of the defensive line. And I want to show it to you in the numbers. And here's what I mean. And we're only going to talk about two Alabama games very specifically, so the people who are Alabama folks can hang in there with me. I know they love this. They're hardcore worried about Georgia. That's for sure. Georgia finished this past season 113.6 yards per game in rushing defense, 18th in the country. Not the end of the world. A lot of those yards were, against Auburn. A lot of folks, dealt with that themselves when they were playing Auburn. Georgia got ran on by Mizzou a little bit and some other things. We're going to go through that for a second as well. Here's the important part. Against Alabama and Atlanta, Bama didn't run for a lot. Bama's not run for a lot against Georgia lately. In any of the three games that they played since 2020, the games have all been pretty hard to get rushing yards. But right here, 41 for 114 yards. That's enough. That's enough for a team like Alabama with the quarterback situation that it had to get the job done. That's exactly what happened in Atlanta. Now, let's go back to Atlanta from 2021. 115 yards on 26 carries. Some of those were Bryce Young yards. He played amazing in that game, to be honest with you. But then but then we get to Indianapolis, and Alabama doesn't even have has about a yard per carry. Okay, they get run on in a very significant way. Georgia went for 140 on 30 carries. One of those really long runs for some James Cook. But if you're not getting that kind of stuffing of the opposition in big games, like where you're making them completely one-dimensional, it's harder to win games. It doesn't mean that you won't win games. It's just a lot harder to win games. Now, I'm going to go through a few more of these games, so stick with me here. UT Martin, Ball State, about 100 yards total in those two games. South Carolina, at the end of the day, they lost that game. They could not run the ball. UAB could not run the ball. Auburn could run the ball. Auburn could not throw the ball. That was a real problem for them. They didn't even have 100 yards passing. Kentucky, 55 yards. Vandy, 18 yards. Florida, a lot of these yards in the run game were near the end of the game. Okay, 109. Missouri, difficult game for Georgia, 151 yards. Ole Miss did all it could have done, should have done, whatever you want to call it, on the ground. 45 for 179. Those are numbers where you win games. They gave it 300 yards rushing against Georgia. That's just not acceptable. That's far too many yards. They gave up 611 yards. Tennessee, 130, again, on 25 carries. That's not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. But, Georgia just ran away from them. Georgia lit them up in the passing game, 472 yards, 156 yards rushing. It was just too much. Why did Georgia Tech stick around? Even though it was a slow-motion blowout, why did Georgia Tech stick around? 205 yards rushing. Look at the Noles, 63. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. Half of Georgia games this past year, the other team did not have 100 yards rushing. How many of those games were blowouts? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the 6 were blowouts. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, if you are going to stop the run, the other team's not going to win. They just are not going to win. I've only got a few of these left. Check out this Kelee Ringo signed DAWGSTRUCTION. I'm going to put the link right down below. It's from our friend Kelee Ringo. Signed a bunch of these for us. He's getting ready for another season in the NFL. This was a moment against Alabama I don't think anybody's going to forget. It's the behind-the-scenes story of the 2021 National Championship, the first one in a long time for the Dogs. First one in a long time for the Dogs. The next one wasn't nearly as long. It was exactly 12 months, 366 days, I think. So I think getting down to the nitty-gritty now, you're returning Brinson, Stackhouse, Ingham Dawkins, Williams, Miller, Hall, Jarrett. I mean, you got some guys coming back. Your linebackers, you don't have a problem at linebacker. You have some really good young linebackers. C.J. Allen's one of them. Munden, Chambliss, Walker. I mean, Walker makes a bunch of plays. So when you go back and look at this, so when you compare, so the 2021 defense was one of the all-time great defenses in the history of college football, particularly against the run. Clemson, Taters managed 2 yards. That's 2 more yards than I had in Charlotte that night. South Carolina, 90. Vandy, 53. Arkansas, 75. Auburn, 46. Kentucky, 51. Again, Arkansas, Kentucky, these are tough teams. They want to run the ball. Couldn't run it against them. Florida hung around a little bit that night in Jacksonville until the second half, and it was, until near the beginning of the end of the second quarter. It was all over, thanks to N'Kobe Dean and some mistakes from the Gators. So 161 from the Gators, and then 121 from Mizzou. Only 55 for Tennessee. Charleston Southern was 68. The Jackets with 98, and then we go down to when it counts, which were these 3 games here. What's amazing here is that Georgia almost went through Alabama, Michigan, Alabama. Well, they did go through it with surrendering as an average fewer than 100 yards a game. Like, that's pretty impressive. But in the playoffs, they did not even allow 130 yards rushing total. Now, they didn't allow 130 yards rushing the entire season except one game, which was Florida. So, if you can get that kind of production from this defense, they're not going to lose. But it's hard to imagine them being successful if they're not really good against the run. Okay, that's been something they've been so good at for such a long time that it's sort of the cornerstone of this program is you're just not going to run the ball on them. I mean, Missouri did an effective job in 2023. The years are getting confused. In 2023, Mizzou did an effective job running the ball. Alabama did enough. In 2020, Florida did enough. It wasn't great, but it was enough. You've got to be completely stout the way they've been for such a long time. If they can't do that, they will not be successful in 2024. It just won't happen. It just will not happen. When you look back real quick on 2022. Again, a really good defense, not from 2021, but a really good defense. Oregon with Bo Nix, 140. But then Samford, Carolina, Kent State, all at the 100 level or lower, or fewer, excuse me. Mizzou, 102. Auburn, 93. 45 for Vandy. So we're through the meat of Georgia's schedule. They've allowed one team to go over 103 on them, which was Oregon. Tennessee, 94. State, 47. I mean, when you're at these games, and as you see here with Ohio State, I'm going to get my global point here in a second. You never feel like Georgia's going to lose when you're on the field because the other team can't move the ball. They can't get first downs because they're not in 2nd and 7. They're in 2nd and 9. Doesn't sound like that big of a deal. Believe me, it is. Because if you're incomplete on first down or if you're incomplete on second down, instead of 2nd and 7, instead of 2nd and 9, then you're 2nd and 10. Or if there's an incompletion on second down, you're looking at 3rd and 10, man. You're not going to convert a lot of third downs on Georgia 3rd and 10. However, Ohio State, just enough. Just enough. That 119, that was plenty. Now, when we get to the playoff in 2024, we don't know who Georgia's going to play. We don't know, But those guys I just mentioned, Stackhouse, Brinson, etc., they're going to have to bring it. It's Jalen Carter, not there. Trayvon, not there. I mean, so many. Jordan, quite clearly and noticeably not there. Those guys are gone. They've been playing in the league for a couple years now or a year. And, this team is going to have to do it straight up and they're going to have to stop the run or slow it. Once you get past 120 yards for the other team, or in some cases, once you get past 100 yards rushing for the other team, then you're getting into a ball game. Then you're getting into a real ball game. I will say, for instance, with the Oregon game, there are anomalies. You do have situations where teams go for 140 or something like that, where games are not close. That can happen too. but usually not. I mean, again, the Missouri game in 2022, 102 yards. They were basically Mizzou going for about 5 yards a carry. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot against Georgia. Okay, 5 yards, 4, five is a lot. The Gators, when they went for 100, they were going about 3 yards a carry. Missouri was effective against Georgia. They whipped their ass on the line that night. And now it didn't last the whole game, but it lasted enough. And again, Ohio State, 32 for 119. Just quick math off the top of my head says that's 4, but I will do the math because I went to school in DeKalb County. That was 3.7. So, anytime you're around that ballpark, you might have a ball game on your hands. If Georgia can stop it, yeah. If they don't, man, it's hard to see them being completely elite without slowing people down.